It's time to hit the dance floor and funk your way towards first place with our Panic at the Disco comp. This comp uses a full disco team with Twisted Fate as your main carry with ramping attack speed and AP damage, and then Blitzcrank with your core tank items as your main frontliner. This comp is really straightforward, which makes it pretty easy to play, but because everybody loves to groove, the chances are quite high you might get contested. The full comp includes Twisted Fate, Blitzcrank, Sona, Ziggs, Lux, Gragas, Nami and Taric. As you can see, this comp hits hardest with the two 5-cost units Sona and Ziggs. But if you simply cannot find these or someone else has got there first, you could also play this in an easier but also slightly weaker variation. For instance, you could get rid of the two Dazzlers Lux and Ziggs and play Lulu and Zac for less damage but more survivability. For Sona, you can throw in Echo, who will activate Spellweaver for your team, but more importantly Sentinel 2 for extra resistances. As for your headliners, you want to focus on securing either of your main 4-cost disco carries, Twisted Fate or Blitzcrank. Throughout the early game though, you'll want to find alternative headliners as strong filler units and use these as your item holders for your main carries. For tanks, you can go for units like Tahm Kench, Pantheon or Set, and for damage you can use units like Annie, Seraphine or Lux. Speaking of your carries, let's take a look at how to itemize them, and Twisted Fate is your main carry who you want to prioritize first. He works best with a mix of mana, AP and attack speed, so go for a Spear of Shojin, Jeweled Gauntlet and Static Shiv. If you feel like your frontline falls too quickly, then Gunblade is the way to go, and other offensive options include Rageblade, Nashor's Tooth or Guardbreaker. Then we have one of the most consistent frontliners and other disco 4-cost unit, Blitzcrank. He loves those classic tank item combos in Bramble Vest, Dragon's Claw and Warmox, but you can also give him a Steadfast Heart, Gargoyle Stoneplate or a Sunfire Cape. Then you can throw anything remaining that's offensive on your 5-cost Sona and Ziggs, with items like Spear of Shojin, Blue Buff or Rabadance being optimal. Up next we've got Augments, and the highest priority will of course be the disco specific augment Double the Funk. This will increase the radius of your disco balls, making your position way more flexible so you don't have to clump up your team anymore. Other S tier augments for this comp will be any form of buried treasures, as you'll need a lot of items to make this comp tick. You can also go for stationary support for the extra target dummy and survivability of your backline. Unleashed Arcana for the heavy AP items or any form of Jeweled Lotus. A tier augments include Magic Wand for the rod and extra AP or shock treatment. Pandora's items for the perfect items on your carries, or a starter kit as you have 2 disco 4-costs and 2 disco 1-costs. Your best chance to win with this comp is by having Ziggs and Sona 2-starred and joining the party at level 8. This may be pretty hard to achieve, which is why going on an early win streak by activating 3 disco and a good headliner item holder right from the start is crucial. You want to be the first player in your lobby to reach those high levels so you can get an early copy of Twisted Fate, but more importantly Blitzcrank, because he's an extremely versatile tank that's been played in a lot of comps. Reaching level 9 and adding in Alawi with her Spirit Tentacles will definitely boost your chances of a first place too. But there's also one last final high risk, high reward play you can go for if you're in a seriously strong lobby. If you have enough gold, health and levels, you can look to replace your Twisted Fate headliner with the 5-cost Ziggs headliner instead, which is definitely harder to achieve, but if you have the right items ready for him, you'll struggle not to secure that top spot. Let's get on to the fun stuff and have a look at the game plan next, and this comp is a default comp that plays around level 7 and level 8 to find and slot in your 4 and 5-cost carries to complete your board. So during the early stages, the best opener for this comp is by activating 3 disco as early as you can, with Taric, Nami and Gragas. You can then slot in a fill unit like Annie, who you can use as your carry item holder for Twisted Fate. Having her as a Spellweaver headliner is a great option to get you through the early game here. So focus on win streaking and keeping your economy strong, as you really want to reach those later levels with a lot of money. Aim to hit level 6 at stage 3-2 and try to add in units that you will keep using in the late game, as well as units who temporarily let you activate more traits. You can use Pantheon as a tank item holder for Blitzcrank and keep slamming those TF items onto Annie. It's important that you try to stay on a win streak here and keep ramping up your gold ready to hit level 7, which is where this comp really starts to come alive. Towards the end of stage 3 or at 4-1 latest, you want to use your gold to rush to level 7 now. Here it's time to activate 5 disco by finding and slotting in your 4-cost units Twisted Fate and Blitzcrank. You can sell your item holders and Annie as a headliner here and transition those carry items onto TF, as well as sending those defensive items onto Blitzcrank. Adding 5 disco will instantly become one of the strongest boards in the game at this level, thanks to that additional disco ball really making the difference. If you do get super lucky and find a Twisted Fate or Blitzcrank headliner, immediately go for those. And there's also Lux as a Dazzler headliner option too. Level up to 8 at the end of stage 4 or at stage 5-1, and try to bring in the 2 legendary 5-cost Sona and Ziggs to really lock in this comp's full potential. You're probably going to need lots of gold here, as you'll also want to sell your previous headliner here to find Twisted Fate as your new headliner if you haven't already. You'll also want to finish upgrading any of your units that you still need to. If you're struggling with gold or with finding those 5 costs, you can also place someone like Echo or Zac. Let's finish off with the positioning of this comp. You want to start by making sure that each unit is positioned adjacent to a disco ball to not miss out on any of the extra attack speed and healing. As for your most important tank, have Blitzcrank in the center of the front line. Place Taric and Gragas behind him in the second row of the board next to the disco ball. Then you can place the second disco ball towards the left side of the board, where you can surround your backliners around it here instead. Let Ziggs take the corner spot and Twisted Fate next to him so that he gives him his hyper pop bonus to TF. Have Sona above Ziggs and let her mix master attack speed so that your Twisted Fate will blow up the party by throwing cards everywhere. As for Lux, you can just keep her on the opposite backline corner because she's mainly going to focus as a bait unit for crowd divers like Zed. And that will give you everything that you need to know on how to win with our Panic at the Disco comp. Remember, you can follow along with this guide in-game with our TFT overlay, so make sure you download that and bring it with you into your next game. Good luck and have fun.